Have you ever felt like disappearing for a while? Not because you're weak, not because you've given up, but because the world has become too noisy. Too many voices telling you who to be, how to live, what to chase. You scroll, you see, you compare, and somewhere in between, you forget who you are. You start to live for applause rather than peace. You start to exist for validation rather than value, and that's when your soul whispers, disappear. Disappear not to escape life, but to meet it deeply. Disappear not to run away from the noise, but to return to your own silence. Because transformation doesn't happen in the spotlight, it happens in solitude. The seed doesn't bloom under noise, it grows in the quiet darkness of the soil. So today, let's talk about this beautiful mystery. How disappearing can be the beginning of transformation. How silence can teach you more than success. And how the practice of stillness can become your greatest progress. When you disappear from the noise of the world, you begin to hear the whispers of your own soul. It's strange, isn't it? How we spend so much time surrounded by people, by screens, by sound, and yet we still feel unheard. We scroll through endless voices online, we attend gatherings, meetings, and celebrations, but the one voice we truly need to listen to, our own inner voice, gets lost somewhere in the chaos. The world has become so loud that silence feels uncomfortable. We think if things go quiet, something's wrong. But what if that silence is not emptiness, but the space where your soul finally starts to speak? Imagine for a moment, you wake up one morning and decide not to touch your phone. You don't check messages, you don't open social media, you don't play any music. You just sit near your window and listen, really listen. The world outside might be busy, but you start noticing the rhythm of the wind, the chirping of birds, the steady beat of your own breath. In that moment, something magical happens. You begin to return to yourself. The thoughts that were drowned in the noise start to rise, softly, slowly, and truthfully. You start to see what you were running from, what you were chasing, and what you truly need. That quiet moment becomes a mirror, reflecting not who the world wants you to be, but who you already are. Many people think disappearing means isolation or escape, but it's not about running away from life, it's about coming home to it. You disappear not to hide, but to heal. You step away from the noise so you can realign your compass, so you can listen to your own soul's direction instead of the world's distraction. Sometimes we lose clarity because too many opinions blur our vision. Everyone has something to say about how you should live, what you should wear, who you should be. And while advice can help, it often becomes a substitute for your own inner wisdom. You stop trusting yourself. You start depending on validation, likes, and attention. That's when your peace starts to fade, your confidence begins to shake, and your purpose feels far away. The more noise you let in, the less you can hear yourself. Think of an artist painting in a crowded market, surrounded by shouting, music, and chaos. How clearly can that artist create? But take the same artist to a quiet space and suddenly the strokes become more intentional, the colors more vivid, the artwork more alive. That's what silence does to your soul. It gives you the space to create your inner masterpiece. The world teaches us to move fast, but wisdom grows slow. To truly hear your inner guidance, you must slow down enough to feel it. You can't rush clarity. You can't demand peace. You must step away long enough for them to find you. There's a story about a man who went to the mountains seeking wisdom from a monk. When he arrived, he kept asking questions, one after another, non-stop. Finally, the monk smiled, poured tea into a cup, and kept pouring even after it overflowed. The man shouted, "Stop! The cup is full." The monk replied, "Exactly. Your mind is like this cup, too full of noise, opinions, and worries. How can truth enter when you never make space for it?" The man realized silence was the first step toward understanding. In the same way, when you disappear for a while from the screens, the noise, the chatter, you create room for insight. You clear the clutter and make space for your soul's wisdom to flow. In daily life, disappearing can mean taking time for solitude, maybe an evening walk without your phone, a weekend off social media, or even waking up a bit earlier just to sit with yourself. These small acts of withdrawal are not wasted time. They are sacred pauses. They allow you to refill your inner cup before pouring into the world again. You can't serve from an empty vessel. You can't give love, creativity, or kindness if your mind is restless and your spirit tired. Silence restores what noise steals. When you disconnect from the external, you reconnect to the eternal. And something extraordinary happens when you do this. Your decisions become clearer. You stop reacting and start responding. You realize not every opinion deserves your attention, not every comment requires a reply, and not every problem is yours to solve. You learn the value of peace over popularity, depth over display, and authenticity over applause. This transformation isn't loud, it's silent, but it's powerful. You start noticing that your energy no longer depends on others' approval. You stop chasing the noise because you found the calm within it. When you learn to disappear for a while, you discover that silence is not loneliness, it's strength. It's in those quiet hours that the mind settles and the heart speaks. You start to feel guided again, centered again, whole again. The world might not understand your need to be quiet, but that's okay. Your growth doesn't need their understanding. Your soul knows what it needs to expand, and often that need begins with stepping away from everything that distracts you from your higher self. Remember, the flower doesn't make noise when it blooms. The sun doesn't shout when it rises. And the ocean doesn't explain its calm. True transformation happens in silence. So disappear for a while. Let the world wonder where you went. Because when you return, you won't just come back as the same person who left. You'll come back more grounded, more peaceful, and more aligned with the person you were always meant to be. Silence is not emptiness. It's the presence of everything you were too busy to notice. We often mistake silence for a void, a lack of activity, or an uncomfortable pause. Yet in truth, silence is not the absence of sound. It is the fullness of awareness. It is that sacred space where life begins to reveal its hidden music. We have been conditioned to believe that progress is noisy, that success must be announced, that movement must be visible, that something must always be happening. But in silence, we begin to see that the most powerful changes are often invisible. Just as a seed silently grows beneath the soil, our inner transformation too unfolds quietly, beyond the reach of eyes but within the depth of our being. In today's world, silence feels foreign. We fill every gap with noise, music in the background, podcasts during a walk, notifications every few seconds, conversations we don't even need to have. We are afraid of silence because it feels like nothing is happening. Yet silence is where everything happens. It's in silence that the mind begins to untangle, that emotions start to settle, and that clarity rises like sunlight through morning mist. Imagine walking through a forest early in the morning. The air is still, the world hasn't fully woken up, and for the first time, you hear your own footsteps, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird. In that quiet, you feel more alive, more connected, more present. That's what silence does. It doesn't remove life's beauty, it magnifies it. Many people run from silence because it brings them face to face with themselves. The mind that was distracted by constant chatter now starts to reveal its hidden thoughts, its fears, its desires, and that can feel uncomfortable. But growth begins exactly there, in that discomfort. Silence holds a mirror to your inner world. It shows you what needs healing, what needs letting go, and what needs nurturing. Most of us think we are searching for peace, but peace is not something we find. It's something we uncover, buried beneath layers of noise and neglect. When you embrace silence, you peel away those layers. You start hearing the gentle whispers of your conscience, the quiet guidance of your heart, and the loving rhythm of life itself. Think about water for a moment. When the surface of a lake is disturbed, you cannot see your reflection. Only when the water becomes still does your reflection appear clearly. Similarly, when your life is filled with noise, confusion, and hurry, you lose sight of who you are. But when you allow silence to settle, your true self appears, calm, steady, and luminous. That reflection is your soul. That stillness is your truth. The outer world celebrates noise, applause, excitement, recognition, but the inner world thrives on quiet understanding. It is in that inner world that the greatest discoveries are made. There's a beautiful story of a monk who once said, "The tree grows in silence. The sun rises in silence. The stars move in silence." Why do you think your soul needs noise to grow? Those words remind us that silence has never been a void. It is nature's language. It's the language of creation, of wisdom, of God. When you sit in silence, you don't lose connection with the world. You deepen it. You begin to sense that behind every sound, behind every movement, there is an intelligence guiding everything, a divine rhythm unfolding perfectly. Silence allows you to feel that rhythm. It allows you to align with it. In daily life, practicing silence doesn't mean withdrawing completely from people or duties. It means creating moments where you pause, breathe, and listen, truly listen. For instance, try starting your day without rushing into tasks or messages. Sit quietly for 5 minutes. Notice your breath, the light entering your room, the peace before the day begins. In that short silence, your mind gains stability. You begin your day from a place of calm rather than chaos. Or when you feel overwhelmed, instead of reacting immediately, take a few moments of silence. You'll notice your response becomes wiser, kinder, and more balanced. Silence creates space between reaction and response, and in that space lies freedom. Even in relationships, silence has power. Sometimes, instead of arguing or explaining, a moment of silence can bring more understanding than words ever could. When two hearts are quiet, they listen more deeply. When two minds are silent, they connect more truly. Words can confuse, but silence often heals. It allows you to sense what cannot be spoken. The feelings, the intentions, the truth behind the noise. That is why wise people listen more than they speak. They have learned to hear the music hidden beneath silence. And there's another kind of silence, the silence within action. When you do something with full presence, without distraction or inner chatter, that too is silence. For example, when you cook with attention, when you walk mindfully, when you work with devotion, even amidst activity, there is an inner stillness. That is the silence of mindfulness. It's not about muting the world, it's about quieting your restlessness while living in it. That silence fills your actions with meaning and your presence with peace. When you finally understand that silence is not empty, you stop fearing it. You start craving it. You look forward to those moments of solitude, not because you want to escape life, but because you want to experience it more fully. In silence, you find gratitude for small things: the warmth of tea, the comfort of home, the beauty of the sky. These were always there, but you were too busy to notice. Silence gives them back to you. It makes ordinary moments sacred again. It reminds you that life is not happening somewhere else. It's happening here, in this very breath. So, the next time you feel lost in the world's noise, remember, silence is not your enemy. It is your sanctuary. It is not a pause from life. It is the pulse of life itself. Within that silence lies wisdom, strength, and presence. The more you embrace it, the more you'll discover that silence was never empty. It was always full of everything you were meant to find. The world teaches you to perform. Solitude teaches you to be real. From the moment we open our eyes to this world, we are told how to behave, how to dress, how to speak, how to succeed, and how to please others. Slowly, without even realizing it, we begin to wear masks. We perform to fit in, to be accepted, to be admired. We become experts at smiling when we are tired, pretending to be fine when we are not, and chasing dreams that were never truly ours. The applause feels good for a while, but deep inside, we know that the person being praised is not entirely us. It's the version we've built for the world. And that's when something inside begins to ache for authenticity, for the courage to be real, not rehearsed. Life becomes a constant performance. At work, in friendships, on social media, even in moments of rest, we start competing not with others, but with the image we've created of ourselves. Every post, every achievement, every interaction becomes another scene in the play of who I should be. But solitude, on the other hand, strips away that stage. It invites you off the spotlight and into the silence where no one is watching. And in that space, you are no longer an actor. You are simply yourself. There's no applause, no judgment, no expectations. Just you, raw, unfiltered, real. At first, that can feel strange. You might not even recognize yourself without the noise of others defining who you are. But slowly, solitude begins to show you the person you've been hiding behind the performance. Think of it this way. When an artist paints a masterpiece in front of a crowd, the pressure to impress often limits their creativity. But when that same artist paints alone, in the quiet of their studio, their heart guides their hand. There's no fear, no pretending, just pure expression. That's what solitude does to your soul. It allows you to create a life that feels genuine, not glamorous. It helps you see what truly brings you joy, not what looks successful to others. When you spend time in solitude, you begin to understand your emotions better. You see your weaknesses without shame and your strengths without arrogance. You start to feel compassion for yourself, realizing that you don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You only need to be honest. In daily life, we all play roles: a professional, a parent, a friend, a partner. And while those roles have their importance, we must not forget that behind all of them is a soul seeking truth. Solitude reminds us that our value doesn't depend on how well we perform those roles, but on how sincerely we live them. A teacher who teaches from love rather than obligation, a leader who listens more than they speak, a friend who shows up silently in someone's pain. These are not performances, they are expressions of authenticity. The world claps for success, but the soul bows for sincerity. There's a powerful story of a monk who was once invited to speak to a crowd. As he entered, people cheered loudly. He stood silently, closed his eyes, and waited. After a minute of silence, the crowd grew quiet too. Then he said, "When you clap, you see the man. When you are silent, you see the message." That moment reflects life so beautifully. When we are surrounded by noise, we see only the surface of things, the labels, the status, the appearance. But in solitude, we see depth. We begin to understand the difference between who we are and what we show. In solitude, your heart speaks truths that the world's noise has drowned. You begin to ask yourself questions that no one else can answer. Am I living the life I truly want? Do I love what I do, or am I just doing it to be seen as successful? Am I honest in my relationships, or am I performing to maintain them? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are sacred. They lead you back to authenticity. They help you remove the layers of pretense that keep you disconnected from your true self. When you stop performing, something amazing happens. You start feeling lighter. You no longer carry the burden of maintaining an image. You begin to breathe freely again. You stop saying yes when your heart means no, stop smiling to hide your pain, and stop chasing things that drain your soul. You learn to rest without guilt, speak your truth without fear, and walk your path without comparison. That is the quiet confidence solitude gives you. The strength to be real even in a world obsessed with appearance. And it's not that solitude makes you indifferent to others. In fact, it makes you more compassionate, because when you truly meet yourself, you understand the struggles behind every other person's mask too. You stop judging people for their performances and start seeing the human behind them. You realize everyone is fighting their own battles, carrying their own burdens, and pretending for their own reasons. This understanding makes you kinder, softer, wiser. You start connecting with people not through roles, but through truth. Imagine the peace that comes when you no longer need to impress anyone, not even yourself. You live quietly, but meaningfully. You may not be seen by millions, but you'll be known by those who matter. You may not be celebrated publicly, but you'll be at peace privately. And that peace is priceless. That peace is what solitude teaches you, that you don't have to perform to be loved. You just have to be present. You don't have to be perfect to be respected. You just have to be real. So, step away from the stage once in a while. Let the world perform if it must. Take a moment to breathe, to listen, to feel. In that stillness, you will meet the most authentic version of yourself. The one who doesn't need an audience to feel alive. The one who doesn't need noise to feel seen. And once you meet that version of you, you'll realize that the world may teach you to perform, but solitude teaches you the art of being simply, beautifully, and truthfully real. Disappearing doesn't mean cutting off people. It means reconnecting with your inner self. Many people misunderstand solitude as loneliness. They think stepping back from others is a sign of weakness or disinterest. But disappearing for a while is not about pushing people away. It's about pulling yourself back together. In the noise of relationships, work, responsibilities, and constant communication, we sometimes lose the connection that matters most, the connection with our own spirit. We forget that before we can give love, we must have love within. Before we can bring peace to others, we must have peace inside. Disappearing is not withdrawal, it's renewal. It's a sacred journey inward where you rediscover who you are beneath the layers of roles, expectations, and opinions. In our fast-paced world, we are constantly surrounded by interactions. Texts, calls, messages, and notifications keep us plugged into everyone else's lives, but disconnected from our own. We often confuse constant communication with connection, yet true connection doesn't always need words. Sometimes the most meaningful relationship you can build is the one you build in silence with your inner being. Think of your mind like a lake. When it's constantly disturbed by waves of activity, you can't see your reflection clearly. But when the water becomes still, your reflection appears. Similarly, when you step away from external noise, you start to see yourself clearly again. There are moments in life when your soul gently whispers, pause. You might feel it after long periods of stress, after trying too hard to please others, or when everything feels heavy. That whisper isn't telling you to escape the world, it's inviting you to rest and recalibrate. When you take that time to disappear into your own silence, you begin to listen again, not to others' opinions, but to your own truth. You start recognizing what drains your energy and what nourishes your heart. You start understanding what truly matters. These realizations cannot be heard amidst noise. They are found in stillness. Imagine a person who keeps watering everyone else's garden, but never waters their own. Over time, their garden begins to dry, their flowers fade, and their joy withers. That's what happens when we constantly give without reconnecting with ourselves. Disappearing is like returning to your garden, tending to your own soil, planting seeds of self-awareness, self-love, and self-respect. You don't disappear because you don't care about others. You disappear because you care enough to you have something genuine to give when you return. In daily life, disappearing can look simple. It can mean spending a quiet morning alone before the world wakes up, taking a long walk without headphones, or sitting in nature and letting your thoughts settle. It's in these moments that you begin to feel a sense of alignment. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions start moving in the same direction again. You begin to see where you've been acting out of pressure instead of purpose, where you've been pleasing instead of being present. These small realizations lead to profound changes because they bring you back to authenticity. There's a beautiful story about a man who once climbed a mountain to seek advice from a wise hermit. When he reached the top, the hermit asked, "Why have you come?" The man said, "I'm surrounded by people, yet I feel empty. I have everything, yet I feel lost." The hermit smiled and handed him a mirror. The man looked at his reflection and saw tired eyes staring back. "When was the last time you spoke to this person?" the hermit asked. The man stayed silent, realizing that he had been talking to everyone except himself. The hermit said softly, "Go back, but this time speak less to others and more to your own heart." That's the essence of disappearing, not to vanish, but to meet yourself again. When you take time to reconnect with yourself, your relationships also transform. You begin to relate from a place of wholeness rather than need. You stop expecting others to fill your emptiness because you've already filled it with your own awareness and peace. You become calmer, more understanding, and more compassionate, not because you've learned new communication skills, but because you've tuned into your inner calm. The person who has spent time in silence learns to listen deeply, love fully, and respond wisely. In our constant need to be available for others, we often forget that we must also be available for ourselves. You can't pour from an empty cup, yet so many people try to do just that, giving and giving until they are left exhausted. Disappearing gives you time to refill. It allows you to understand that saying no to others sometimes means saying yes to your own growth. It's a reminder that your presence is only valuable when it comes from a place of balance. People may not always understand why you need to step back, but your inner peace doesn't need explanation. The truth is, solitude strengthens relationships. When you know who you are, you no longer fear being alone. When you are connected to yourself, you no longer seek constant validation. This inner strength makes you more peaceful and grounded. You stop attaching your worth to how others see you because you've already seen your worth through your own eyes. You become less reactive, more forgiving, and more mindful. Your silence becomes your teacher, your solitude becomes your sanctuary, and your presence becomes your gift to the world. So disappearing isn't about leaving people behind, it's about finding yourself so deeply that when you return, you bring light, not exhaustion. You bring peace, not pressure. You bring authenticity, not performance. It's about stepping back so you can step forward with clarity. The world will always pull at your attention, but your soul will always call you home. Listen to that call. Take that time. Don't fear the quiet, embrace it. Because in that sacred stillness, you will rediscover not just your inner self, but the divine harmony that was always within you, waiting for you to return and remember who you truly are. Transformation is not a single event. It's a series of quiet renewals that happen in your still moments. Most of us imagine transformation as something sudden, something dramatic, like a burst of lightning that changes everything at once. We think it comes with loud announcements, big achievements, or visible milestones. But real transformation doesn't make noise, it whispers. It doesn't happen on a stage, it happens in silence. It doesn't happen in one grand moment, it unfolds slowly, quietly, and gently in the unseen corners of your everyday life. Like dawn, it doesn't arrive with thunder, it simply replaces the darkness with light, moment by moment. When we look at a butterfly, we admire its colors, its grace, its beauty. But what we forget is the stillness it had to endure as a caterpillar inside a cocoon. No one applauded its patience, no one celebrated its waiting. It disappeared into silence, wrapping itself in solitude. And there, in the unseen darkness, the miracle happened. That's what transformation really is. It's not glamorous, it's sacred. It's not loud, it's patient. It's not something you show others, it's something you grow within yourself. In our fast-moving world, we are obsessed with instant results. We want quick changes, quick success, quick peace. But the truth is, anything that grows deeply takes time. Just as a tree doesn't bear fruit in a day, your transformation too unfolds layer by layer through countless moments of reflection, struggle, and surrender. The progress may seem invisible, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. When you sit in silence, face your fears, forgive your past, and nurture your inner calm, all of these small, quiet choices begin to build the foundation of transformation. Every time you choose peace over reaction, compassion over anger, or patience over rush, you are transforming. Think about how water shapes a rock, not through force but through persistence. Drop by drop, moment by moment, it smooths even the hardest surface. That's how transformation works. The world may not see it, but you can feel it. In the way you think, the way you respond, the way you carry yourself through life's storms. Transformation doesn't shout for attention, it radiates quietly from within. You start noticing small shifts. You're no longer hurt by the same words. You no longer chase the same validation. You begin to see beauty where you once saw burden. These shifts are the true signs of growth, and they happen in silence, far from applause. In daily life, we often mistake activity for progress. We think that if we're busy, we're growing. But sometimes the greatest progress happens when we pause. When you take a few moments to reflect before reacting, when you choose to rest instead of rush, when you forgive instead of fight, those quiet decisions reshape your inner world. They may not look impressive from the outside, but inside something divine is unfolding. You are evolving into a calmer, wiser, and stronger version of yourself. That evolution doesn't announce itself. It simply begins to show in the way you live. Imagine a person who decides to start meditating every morning. For the first few days, nothing seems to change. The mind is noisy, the body restless, the thoughts scattered. But day after day, as they sit in silence, something begins to shift. The mind softens, the noise lessens, the heart opens. One day, they notice that the little things that used to upset them no longer hold the same power. That's transformation, not in one big moment, but in hundreds of quiet mornings, in hundreds of patient breaths. Transformation doesn't always look like success. Sometimes it looks like surrender. It's the courage to let go of control, to trust the timing of your life. It's when you stop forcing outcomes and start flowing with what is. You begin to realize that not everything broken needs fixing, not every question needs an answer right away, and not every delay is a denial. Some things take time because your soul is still preparing to receive them. And in those waiting seasons, though nothing seems to move, everything inside you is growing. There's a story of a gardener who planted bamboo seeds and watered them faithfully every day. For the first year, nothing grew. The second year, still nothing. The third year, the same, only empty soil. Yet the gardener didn't stop watering. Then in the fifth year, the bamboo suddenly shot up, growing over 80 feet in a matter of weeks. Did it really grow in those few weeks? No. It had been growing all along, beneath the surface, bending roots deep enough to support its height. That's what your inner transformation looks like. You may not see results yet, but beneath the surface, your roots are strengthening, preparing you for what's to come. So, don't underestimate your small efforts. Every act of kindness, every moment of stillness, every breath of gratitude, they are all shaping you. The changes you seek aren't found in the rush of doing, but in the rhythm of being. Transformation is not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to the person you were always meant to be. Peaceful, present, and pure. You don't need to force it. You just need to stay faithful to your journey. And remember, transformation doesn't mean your life will be perfect. It means you will see perfection even in imperfection. You will begin to understand that every delay, every detour, every disappointment had a purpose. Life isn't trying to break you, it's trying to build you. Every challenge is a teacher, every silence a lesson, every failure a redirection. When you look back one day, you'll realize that all those quiet renewals, the ones that seemed small and unseen, were the stepping stones that shaped your strength, your wisdom, and your peace. So let your transformation be slow, let it be silent, and let it be sacred. You don't have to prove it to anyone. Just keep growing quietly, consistently, courageously. Because true transformation doesn't happen when the world notices you've changed. It happens when your soul smiles and whispers, "I'm becoming who I was meant to be,"